the air with that direct hit. Southern Louisiana slammed by a Category 2 storm, setting its sights then on Mississippi. Our teams are live along the Gulf Coast, and we're going to have Louisiana's governor in just a minute on what his state urgently needs right now. Plus, former President Trump, in just the last little bit, ruling out another debate against Vice President Kamala Harris, who also just recently tonight said she'd like to see one. Both of them now barnstorming battlegrounds. We're live in Arizona and North Carolina with the candidates and conspiracies shaping this race. Then we could be just hours away from a big strike by Boeing workers, what it could do to a company already in some hot water. And in tonight's original, why scientists say people in some areas of the country are more at risk for Parkinson's than others. Hey, I'm Hallie, and in just the last couple of minutes, at that 5 o'clock Eastern Hurricane Center update, we are now learning that Francine has been downgraded to a post-tropical cyclone. That is good news after some pretty messy bad news for southern Louisiana overnight, taking a direct hit when that then Category 2 storm made landfall as that hurricane less than 24 hours ago. I want to show you here the scene across the area from New Orleans to Morgan City, St. Mary Parish as well. People all along the Gulf Coast now trying to make their way back into their waterlogged homes. You saw a ton of streets. I mean, look at this. Look at all the flooding just in this one neighborhood in Livingston Parish. Rescuers were spending the night trying to pull people out of this floodwater as hurricane-force winds knocked down trees and knocked out power, too.
Yeah, I can actually see that person right now climbing over the seat, coming out of their vehicle right now. That person, yeah, actually coming out of the window. There it is. That Good Samaritan helping. Yes, that's a life-saving measure right here. That guy holding on to the pole. This is a life-saving Good Samaritan right here.
Unbelievably dramatic moments that unfolded on live TV on our NBC station WDSU down there in New Orleans. A nurse went into a flooded underpass, essentially, to try to help a truck driver, to try to save this guy in the pickup. He was actually watching the news coverage live when he realized, hey, that's close enough, I can go help, runs out, ends up probably saving this guy's life. He told our Jesse Kirsch he is used to some high-stress situations.
Try to find something to break the window to pull him out, and there was nothing there, so I ran back to my house real quick, grabbed a hammer, went back, and got him out. We respond as swiftly and fast as we can to situations that need our assistance.
Just incredible there. You have Louisiana's governor saying today nobody was killed by the storm, which is incredible, telling reporters that tough times don't last in Louisiana.
We are the very epitome of a resilient people, and it comes from looking out for one another.
You're going to see the governor live with us in just a little bit here later this hour on the show. Right now, you've got more than 300,000 people without power tonight. You can see the map here. This is across Mississippi, the worst of it in Louisiana, but Alabama and Tennessee, they're not escaping this either. You have about 11 million people under flood alerts in the South as Francine moves further inland. Bill Cairns is going to have our forecast in just a second. Stephen Romo is in Gulfport in Mississippi, but I want to start with Jay Gray in New Orleans. Talk us through what you're seeing right now, because some 100 homes are said to have taken on water where you are here. What does cleanup look like right now?
Well, it's a mess, and they are working to clean up what they can, Hallie. I can tell you it's twofold right now. Those homes that took on water, they've got to clear everything out. Some as much as 6 inches standing inside the homes, so they've got to pull everything, including the sheetrock, out. It's a hot environment. It's a humid environment, so mold is a big issue, and it's a big issue quickly. And a lot of them are working through that with no power, no AC, so that's rough as well. On the other side is that power situation. You've still got tens of thousands with no power here, and in some of the hardest hit areas where they're pulling tree limbs and trees out of the way, it may be a couple of days before that power is restored. If there's any good news, it's that this storm moved through quickly, didn't sit as long as it could have, and saturate the ground even more. Also, on the power front, the good news is it doesn't look like there's any real structural damage. So it's just an issue of getting in where you can and restoring those lines.
Jay Gray, thank you very much for that. Let me bring in Stephen Romo, who's in Gulfport, Mississippi. Give us the view of things from where you are, Stephen.
Yeah, Hallie, the rain has moved out. We're still getting a few gusts of wind, but the sun has returned here. And the fear so many people had that storm surge, it was offset in large part due to low tide that happened just a couple hours before Francine actually made landfall. Now, there have been a lot of power outages, about 45,000 customers still without power from Mississippi to Alabama as that storm moved on through. We were told here in Gulfport that there was some flooding from low-lying roads, low-lying areas. Those power outages and the storm surge, people's biggest concerns, though, I did talk to people who tried to go get generators before the storm made landfall and weren't able to find them. Of course, that's a difficulty we see so often with these storms. So many people here breathing a sigh of relief right now, but some people telling me that they fear that because things weren't as disastrous as the predictions were, that could make some people complacent for storms to come. Others have lived here long enough to know it can really just depend on the storm, Hallie.
Stephen Romo, thank you. Bill Cairns, let me go to you because we know that just about 5.5 minutes ago, we got that update from the National Hurricane Center, fortunately downgrading Francine, but at this point, the damage is already done. What's next?
Well, we still have a chance of rain. Just because the winds no longer really exist with this storm doesn't mean we still can't get flash flooding, and it doesn't mean we can't get some tornadoes. So there is still some risk associated with the storm. And all the damage pictures that we've been showing you, about 500,000 people at one point without power, it's kind of what you'd expect for a Category 1 hurricane. I know at the last second it did jump up to a 2, but most of the effects with the 2 were all the way down at the coast and the swampy areas. Not many cities or towns experienced it. And by the time it got up to like Baton Rouge, all the way to New Orleans, it was more like a strong tropical storm. So what you're seeing is, what we'd expect to see. Just because it was a Category 2 at landfall doesn't mean we should be seeing things worse than it is. It just made landfall where there's just not a lot to destroy. So that was the good piece of this. So the storm itself is now in northern Mississippi. It's raining hard around areas around Memphis, all the way up towards Paducah, a little boot there of Missouri. We are watching flood watches that are still up for 10 million people. So there's at least potential for flash flooding. Right now, we have no flash flood warnings. That's perfect. Love it. We do have some areas, though, some very strong thunderstorms that are beginning to form. And we do have the chance of that flash flooding developing, especially watching the Birmingham area. And then from Memphis northwards into that little northeast corner there, it gets a little hilly, too, especially in Arkansas. That's where we could get some overnight flooding. As far as the isolated tornadoes go, we're watching this area in red here from Birmingham all the way down to Montgomery to Dothan and including Panama City. We have a line of strong storms right now that's developed. It's mostly focused from the Birmingham area to just to the west side of Montgomery. And that's where we're going to watch isolated strong storms, maybe a tornado warning or two as we go throughout the rest of this evening. And that's probably going to be like, the biggest risk or the biggest problem we're going to see with this. Other than that, in the flash flooding, Hallie, things are going to be slowly improving. And you can notice we don't have any tornado warnings right now, but here's that line we'll be tracking heading right through Selma, Alabama. Pretty intense storm right here. That will be up there in Birmingham, probably roughly about 30 minutes from now. And everyone wants to know what's next. We are at the peak of hurricane season. We do expect other threats, but nothing on the horizon. We do have a tropical depression way out in the Atlantic, not an issue. We do have a tropical disturbance that's heading for the Virgin Islands and Puerto Rico. Going to bring some squally weather there over the next couple of days, but nothing that's going to develop. And then there's this little area that should develop this weekend off the coast of South Carolina. This is going to bring some waves and some rain, but that won't get that strong either, Hallie. So some nuisance stuff, which I'm happy to report. Nothing ominous.
Many people are happy to hear that report. Bill, thank you very much. Appreciate that. So listen, let's take you out west because prosecutors tonight are officially charging a man with 9 counts of arson for starting one of those big wildfires that is now scorching Southern California. It's called the Line Fire. It's only about 18% contained, and it's combined with those other 2 big fires to burn 110,000 acres of land. That's like 110,000 football fields on fire. So firefighters are hoping they get a bit of a silver lining here, that the cooler and wetter weather that forecasters think will come later this week can help them stop these fires, get a handle on them, and try to slow down the spread. Morgan Chesky is joining us now. Let me start with these arson charges. What can you tell us about who's behind it, who's suspected to be behind it, and how this fire started?
Yeah, Hallie, authorities identified that lone suspect as 34-year-old Justin Halstenberg. He was taken into custody on Tuesday because investigators say they were able to trace his white pickup truck with the help of eyewitness accounts and of license plate readers. We do not know his potential motive in lighting the line fire here, but we do know that he faced, as you mentioned, 9 arson charges earlier today. Included within that, he was charged with 3 separate charges of starting fires and then bodily injury of a firefighter. I want you to hear a little bit more of what the sheriff had to say following these official charges. Take a listen.
We have to remember that this is still an evolving incident as well. We don't know what's going to happen. We know the containment on the line fire is increasing, but there's still a potential for more people to be disrupted and, heaven forbid, anybody to be injured or killed.
Line fire containment sits at 18%, Hallie. Farther south in Orange County, the airport fire, about 8% contained there. It is still incredibly active, but the number that everyone is concerned about right now is where we're standing near Wrightwood, California. The bridge fire here, 0% containment as it stands right now. Hallie?
Forecast, we talked about this, you referenced this. We know that when it is so hot and so dry, it's so hard to get these fires under control. Good news may be coming, though, right, if there is a silver lining?
Absolutely. We were talking about triple digits earlier this week, wearing down these fire crews out in this incredibly rugged terrain. Today, about 30, maybe 40 degrees cooler, thank goodness. That could hopefully help them. But for too many people, the damage here already done, Hallie. You see just one home of dozens incinerated behind me. The evacuation still very much in effect for this Wrightwood neighborhood. And if there is another silver lining, Hallie, no fatalities reported. But as you can see right here, there is an incredible amount of damage with losses that have yet to be fully tallied, at least as of right now. Hallie?
Morgan Chesky live for us there in California. Morgan, thank you very much. Any minute now, we want to stay out west because you're going to see former President Trump take the stage we're about to show you in Arizona with both of these presidential candidates now back on the campaign trail for the first time since that debate this week. So this is the rally. That is obviously not Donald Trump. He will be stepping behind that microphone in just a couple of minutes. Now, that debate this week, according to Mr. Trump, it will not be part of a trilogy. He's writing off the possibility of another debate, maybe a last debate with Vice President Kamala Harris in just the last little bit here. Now, what does VP Harris say? She wants another one, as her campaign is reporting its biggest 24-hour fundraising push yet, bringing in some $47 million. Her biggest fundraising push since she got into this race in July, when she hauled in a ton of money then. It comes as NBC reports Mr. Trump's conspiracy theory-filled debate, like the claim that migrants in Ohio are eating people's pets, alarmed some of his allies, a baseless claim. A claim that's taking a huge toll on the city of Springfield, where earlier today police had to evacuate several buildings, including City Hall there, because of a bomb threat. This is the police response. Now, NBC News has not confirmed details of the threat, but the mayor, according to local media, says it was related to frustration with Springfield's Haitian migrant population. So now with Mr. Trump in Arizona, you've got this battleground split screen, because look what's happening in North Carolina. That's where Vice President Kamala Harris just wrapped up a rally as she's ramping up the push to try to flip that state and get its 16 electoral college votes. When was the last time North Carolina went blue? You got to look back. 2008 and Barack Obama. But the latest polling shows very close margins. The VP hopes a lot of young people moving to the state could help boost her chances. She's going to Pennsylvania tomorrow. She's already made 15 battleground trips since entering the race 6 weeks ago. Mike Memoli is going to have more on that in just a second. Former President Trump is May 29, by the way. Let me get with Vaughn Hilliard, who is traveling with the former president in Arizona. And what's interesting, Vaughn, is he just wrapped up an interview, like literally in the last not even 30 minutes, with Telemundo Arizona, right? Talking about a lot of this stuff. Walk us through it.
Right. He was working with our colleague, Jesus Gonzalez, just a few moments ago, not only about the debate and his decision vocally to not take part in a third debate, but he was also talking about the words that he spoke from that stage, about the claim that there were pets, dogs and cats that were being eaten in Ohio, which, of course, local authorities say that there are no credible claims that have been filed with them of such. I want to let you listen to him saying and responding to the latest. Take a listen.
Well, that's come from stories. It's come from television. And some of the pets, I don't know, cats, dogs, or both, but some of the pets were taken by the migrants. And it's a shame. It's sad.
Of course, that moment from the debate took up a lot of focus, and I was talking, Hallie, with several supporters of the former president here in Tucson, Arizona. You can hear him taking the stage behind me now. And I asked him about the debate, and multiples of them told me that they wish that he had been more focused on the budget, on other issues, instead of going off on tangents like this conspiracy theory. One woman telling me she hadn't heard about it, went and Googled it, and she said she couldn't find anything to actually back it up. She was concerned about some independent voters being turned off by those sorts of riffs here, and that she wished she'd stay focused. But Donald Trump here just in the last hour now suggesting he won't do a third debate with Kamala Harris. So at this point in time, it's going to be rallies like this where Donald Trump is going to have to seal the deal in order to get back the White House, Hallie.
Well, so what's the nexus with noted conspiracy theorist Laura Loomer, with whom he's been spending some time recently?
Right, Laura Loomer is this right-wing provocateur, conspiracy theorist. Just last year, she promoted the 9/11 truther conspiracy, that it was an inside job, 9/11. She flew to Philadelphia to debate with him, was at 9/11 ceremonies in New York and Pennsylvania with him. And she's somebody who is promoted just 2 weeks ago this conspiracy theory that a Georgia school shooting was done by Democrats with the FBI's complicity to help them in the election. She has been a conspiracy theorist that Nikki Haley worked with the federal government to try to create a winter storm during last Iowa caucus to try to tamp down Donald Trump supporters from turning out in the Republican primary against him. And so this is somebody who has raised the concerns of Republican Lindsey Graham, but also the likes of Marjorie Taylor Greene, who has said she's unstable and should not be around Donald Trump, that she diminishes the MAGA brand. Yet, so far the campaign has not distanced Donald Trump from Laura Loomer, and so far Donald Trump has not distanced himself from her either.
Vaughn Hilliard, live for us there as former President Trump walks out onto stage in Arizona. Mike Memley, we called it a split screen, and that's because it is. He is coming out in Arizona as you are there in North Carolina. On the other side of the country, where Vice President Harris had been traveling, she just wrapped up a rally not too long ago. We're going to say this phrase a lot over the course of the next 7 weeks, dueling rallies. That's because these candidates are expected largely to kind of pick up the pace as they move forward. Third debate or second for these two or not?
Well, what we saw just at the second the vice president took the stage here was to talk about that debate, which has been just a real point of enthusiasm among the voters I've been talking to here, and said she thinks we owe it to the voters to have another debate. Now, this would be the second debate for her, the third debate for the former president, of course, who had his earlier debate with Donald Trump. But listen, the Harris team has spent pretty much the last 36 hours pouring through that debate, looking through those clips yet again, surveying what it showed up in their dial groups as they were doing some live responses from voters to figure out which of those moments is best now capitalized on, both in terms of the paid advertising, and we've seen them already turn 2 clips into TV ads, but also what she can continue to do from the stages of these rallies. She has another one that she's on her way to right now in Greensboro. Take a listen to what she seized on one of the major issues in this race, especially here in North Carolina, as it relates to health care and what Donald Trump said about replacing potentially Obamacare. Take a listen.
He has no plan to replace it. He said, concepts of a plan. Oh, you all watched the debate. Concepts. No actual plan, concepts.
Now, what we see is this campaign continues to unfold and the campaigns speak to their respective bases as well. The Trump campaign actually posted that same clip, which is interesting, right? She's attacking him over not having a plan to replace Obamacare, but they highlighted it because of what you heard in terms of her laugh. They called it cringe. The Harris campaign then responded themselves to say, thank you for highlighting essentially one of our main attacks on you.
I mean, there is so much. This is going to go on, for the next almost 2 months, the next 50-plus days here, Mem. But the message that it's all aimed at, of course, are voters. And what's interesting is you talk about what the Harris campaign posts, for example. You look at TikTok, they're really going after young voters there with the Kamala HQ account, trying to post these memes, post these kind of catchy things a lot. North Carolina, important. And for the other side of the spectrum, right, or for other voters, Barack Obama, Hillary Clinton, set to come out, set to try to fundraise for the vice president tomorrow. So not the campaign piece, but the money piece, which is also going to be important here, too, for both campaigns, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, what we've heard from voters here today was that they haven't felt this way about a campaign since 2008. I talked to one voter who is a first-time voter, and this is what she told me.
Being able to have my first time voting being for a black woman, it's really important to me. So I know it's my duty to ensure that the very first person that I elect is somebody who I'll be proud to say 50 years later that's who I was able to elect into office.
And now what you also see in terms of the enthusiasm translating into fundraising, you mentioned that big haul. You mentioned Hillary Clinton, Barack Obama raising money next week. Kamala Harris not doing a lot of it because, frankly, she doesn't have to. Only one fundraiser that she's supposed to headline in the next month as of right now.
Mike Memoli live for us there in North Carolina. Mem, thank you very much. It's good to see you. Appreciate it. Let's take you back to our top story tonight. The aftermath of Francine, again, now downgraded to a tropical storm. You see here that the Louisiana governor, Jeff Landry, is joining us now. Governor, thank you so much for your time on what I know has been a busy couple of days for you.
Yes, thank you.
So talk to me. How are people there doing right now? What is the thing that you are currently most concerned about? What's keeping you up at night right now?
Well, look, right now, the most important thing we can do is get our utilities back up and online. We had over 500, almost 500,000 people without power last night. That has drastically been improved, probably by about a 50% margin. I just spent the day touring some of the most affected areas of the state and going to do it again tomorrow. And again, power is the most important thing that we need right now, is being able to get the crews up and get the lines put back in place and then get the electricity back on.
How long do you think that'll take?
You know, we don't know. We're hoping that by Sunday we could have that up and running. That's our hope. We do have some of the infrastructure that had been damaged during Hurricane Ida was damaged again before we had a time to repair it. And of course, that's a concern of ours as well, because hurricane season is really at its peak right now. Yeah. And so we had some issues over in the city of New Orleans and around the New Orleans metropolitan area with the heavy rainfall that came with this system. We're going to be there tomorrow talking to them, trying to work out a plan to ensure that we can get through the rest of hurricane season safely.
The president approved a FEMA emergency declaration. Do you feel, Governor, that you have the support that you need from the federal government to try to get you through this moment?
Well, the White House had given us a pre-landfall declaration. We sent another request for a major declaration, which we're waiting on from them. We had Senator Kennedy was with us today during the tour. He committed to making sure that Washington responds positively and we have the money necessary. But the declaration from the White House certainly would be helpful if we could get that today.
You know, you've referenced Hurricane Ida. Francine's going to be the 7th hurricane. It was the 7th hurricane to make landfall in 8 years in Louisiana. It's the first you've had to deal with, I believe, in your administration. Did you feel ready to respond to this? Is there anything you would have done differently this time around?
Look, I got to tell you, you know, I've been living in Louisiana all my life, worked as a sheriff's deputy under Hurricane Andrew. I can tell you that the team we put together did an outstanding job. We had a great working relationship from local to state to federal partners. We appreciated the FEMA administrator who toured the state with us today. Look, I can tell you right now, the thing that's keeping me up at night right now is what happens in the next storm if we have another one this year.
Okay, so what are you going to do about that? Get more specific here, because if you're concerned about the infrastructure, the power outages, et cetera, what can the state do to make sure that people aren't left hanging, left in the dark, left, you know, the opposite of high and dry, if you will, for the next one?
Well, again, the most important thing we can do is get the White House to give us that declaration. Okay. That'll get the money flowing down here so that we can improve those infrastructures. Again, we're going to be dealing with the city of New Orleans and the New Orleans metropolitan area tomorrow to find out what kind of failures they had that we can make sure that are not repeated if we have another storm this year.
Let me ask you about the sewer system, because there was a notification that went out today down by New Orleans asking people to basically conserve water for the next couple of days while sewer repairs are made. How widespread of an issue is that? Does that extend to other parts of the state? And could that time period be extended?
Well, the city of New Orleans, of course, everyone knows, is in a unique position because of its unique geographical area, right? And it has some challenges. Those are things that we're going to be working with the Sewer and Water Board tomorrow on that, trying to understand what we can do to speed that timetable up. Not only the city of New Orleans, but the Jefferson Parish, which is the neighboring parish to Orleans, has some issues with that as well. We discussed those with the FEMA administrator. We're going to be working on those tomorrow in New Orleans.
So, Governor, what is your message to the people in your state tonight, right now?
Look, I can tell them that we are working diligently to get utilities back up in line. We're making sure that any commodities that they need are being put in place. And then, of course, we also want people who are in the affected area to stay off the roads, okay? So the more you stay off the roads, the more it gives us an opportunity for our utility men to get and women to get their the power back up online.
Governor Jeff Landry of Louisiana, thank you so much for your time tonight, for being with us. I know you're juggling a lot. We look forward to talking with you again soon. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
We've got a lot more coming up here on the show, including the NFL star in Taylor Swift's inner circle, who's now saying he's not going to endorse anyone for president, and the new charges and the new trial that could come for Harvey Weinstein. We're at summer, and it's different because it's almost fall. More on that in just a couple of minutes. But first, tens of thousands of Boeing workers out on the West Coast might be walking off the job as soon as tonight, just a few hours from now. It all depends on how this vote on a new contract goes. If they strike, this would be a pretty big deal. It would stop production at the Boeing plants out west. It's only adding to the pressure for Boeing as it's dealing with production delays, earnings that really aren't what they want it to be, with debt, and then, of course, on top of this pretty tough year for the company. You remember how it started, that door panel blowing off a 737 MAX jet midair in January. The company even bringing in a new CEO last month to help clean things up. Phil LeBeau is joining us now, our friend over there at CNBC. He is out in the field tonight. And Phil, talk us through this potential strike, because the contract they're voting on would include more money, right? That's something these workers want to see.
Yes. Pay is the main issue, Hallie. This contract includes an offer and a tentative agreement by the leadership of the union and the leaders of Boeing. It calls for a 25% pay raise over the next 5 years, 11% when it's initially signed, then 4%, 6%. Overall, you would sit and listen to that and you'd go, hey, 25% is a pretty good deal. Keep in mind, these members' previous contract, the union's previous contract, was a 1% raise every couple of years over the last 8 years. So they believe that they have been shortchanged, if you will, in terms of pay increases that many in other industries have seen over the last several years. In fact, this is what a number of the machinists had to say this morning when I asked them if 25% is enough.
With the way inflation and times are nowadays, people on $20 an hour can't survive.
What would be a fair percentage that you think, okay, maybe people could accept this?
40%, like we applied for the first time.
I mean, we're not just building stuff that you just we're not building bikes, right? We're building airplanes that people fly on.
They are voting for a couple more hours here, Hallie. This vote comes down to this. Two questions that they have to answer. A, do you approve the contract? 50%, basic majority, 50% plus one to approve. But to call for a strike, it's 2/3, a much higher threshold. So there's the possibility, Hallie, that they might say, we don't like that contract, but there's not enough to go on strike, which would send the union leadership back to the negotiating table with Boeing.
We would basically know by the end of the night tonight, right?
Yes.
And this is all happening.
And if there is a strike, it starts at midnight out here.
Okay. Brand new CEO. Walking through the door, getting handed this onto his plate, along with everything else that we talked about in the introduction to you, right? Are we hearing from Kelly Ortberg at all?
We have seen a couple of messages that he has posted. He spent the last couple of days on the floor, both in Renton, Washington, and here in Everett, Washington, talking with the membership. He didn't say a lot aside from, look, we have a chance to start to correct the problems that have been affecting this company dramatically over the last several years. He understands the passionate feelings of the international machinists who are working here. At the same time, he's in a tough spot, Hallie, because 25%, that is, given the finances of Boeing, that's a very generous offer. But you would look at this if you were a machinist and say, what did they get at the UAW? What did they get if they're at certain airlines when those unions threatened to go on strike and they were negotiating new contracts? They believe 40% is a better deal than 25%.
Phil, real quick before I let you go, has anything surprised you about this? You've covered this industry, you understand it. Has anything stood out to you that made you go, well, wait a second, really?
No, because having covered Boeing for almost 30 years, I've seen how the frustration has been building up with the machinists, especially over the last 15 years. When Boeing opened a plant in South Carolina, which is not a union state, the members here really got upset about that. And they haven't been happy about the last couple of contracts. I'm not surprised we're on the cusp of a potential strike here.
Phil LeBeau, lots to watch tonight there in Everett, Washington. So glad to have you, Phil. Thank you very much for being with us. Let's get you over to the 5 things our team thinks you should know about tonight. Number 1, the father of the teenager accused of killing 4 people at that Georgia high school last week, he's now asking a judge for protection while he's in jail. He's in jail because he's being held without bail after being arrested for allegedly letting his son access the gun used in that shooting at Appalachia High School. His lawyer now says that the dad needs to be separated from other inmates because of, in their words, an incalculable number of threats while he's behind bars. Number 2, the Idaho Supreme Court transferring the case of an accused serial killer into Ada County, where Boise is. Remember this big change of venue news related to suspect Brian Kohberger, accused of killing 4 University of Idaho students? The judge granted that change of venue request, and now we know where it is. It had been a question mark earlier in this week. The trial is scheduled to start in June of next year. A new judge has also been assigned to the case. Number 3, hundreds of Boston hotel workers on strike today for the second time this month. They're protesting what they describe as heavy workloads, not enough money, and a reversal of COVID-era cuts, in their words. It comes after 900 employees walked off the job over Labor Day. Number 4, the Kansas City Chiefs quarterback, NFL superstar Patrick Mahomes, says he is not going to endorse any presidential candidate. That's after former President Trump shouted out Mahomes' wife, Brittany Mahomes. Mr. Trump said in an interview he likes, as he said, Mrs. Mahomes, called her a big MAGA fan. Patrick Mahomes says he thinks it's his place to inform people about registering to vote, but he's not going to go further than that, he says, this season. Number 5, we might be saying goodbye to Brat Summer, but we can now say hello to Brat Autumn. Singer Charlie XCX announcing a brand new remix of the Brat album. Obviously, you already know that everybody was having a Brat Summer. Now I guess we get a Brat Fall. I can't wait to see how you celebrate it. Let's take it down to New York, where a lawyer for disgraced Hollywood producer Harvey Weinstein says he expects new charges against his client to be serious felonies. Weinstein now faces a November trial on what prosecutors say are new accusations of sexual misconduct. Here's a big caveat. We haven't actually seen those charges. They are all sealed right now. And here's the thing. If you're like, well, wait a second, Hallie, I don't understand. What do you mean Harvey Weinstein may get a new trial? What do you mean new charges? Isn't this guy already behind bars? Like, what's up? It's a lot, right? Weinstein's been in and out of court on 2 different coasts for years now. The only reason we're talking about this one today is because back in April, a judge threw out his New York rape conviction. That was in April. More than 80 women have said Weinstein sexually assaulted or harassed them. He denies it all. Chloe Malas is joining us now. So now we have these new charges that have been filed against Weinstein. Tell us about what we know and, importantly, what we don't know.
Hey there, Hallie. I mean, basically, we don't really know anything. I mean, the bottom line is that there are 3 incidents, one from 2005 to 2006 in the winter, another from 2006, and then one from 2016. So 3 different incidents. We don't know if this is one woman, multiple women. We don't even know who the accuser or accuser's attorney is. This indictment is expected to be unsealed next week. And remember, Hallie, NBC News, we were the first to report that a New York grand jury had been convened to hear from new potential accusers. And clearly, the New York District Attorney's Office is determined to retry Weinstein, like they said when his 2020 conviction was overturned. You know, they said that they had heard from other victims and that they were going to get him back in a courtroom.
Some people might be looking at this going, well, wait a second. Chloe, why is he still behind bars? He is still a convicted sex offender, even with that earlier New York conviction overturned, right, because of what's happening out in L.A.
Yeah, so again, if he had not been sentenced to 16 years for those separate accusations in the state of California, he could potentially be a free man out on, waiting for this potential new trial, which is expected to take place on November 12th. And because he has this 16-year prison sentence, which he hasn't even begun to serve yet. He's currently in Bellevue Hospital right now, recovering from a heart procedure. But again, he has been held in Rikers. I do want to play some sound from earlier today from one of Harvey Weinstein's attorneys outside of the courthouse.
Even if you don't think highly of Mr. Weinstein, as citizens of this city, this state, this country, you should be upset. You should be like, hey, this is not right. This is not how we're supposed to do things. You don't target a human being and then see, let's go talk to 100 people and maybe we can find someone who says something bad about him, bad enough that we could get an indictment.
So it's looking like Harvey Weinstein is going to head to trial on November 12th, Hallie, and it could be that he faces the original 2020 charges as well as these new accusations, which, again, we're going to learn more when this indictment is unsealed next week.
What about his health? Because didn't he just go in for a procedure at the hospital? His lawyer says he's had some of these health problems. Like, what's going on there? He's 72 years old, right?
Earlier this week, he had major heart surgery, and he's currently recovering at Bellevue. New York prosecutors, they wanted to send him back to Rikers, but his team was actually successful today in getting him to stay at Bellevue. So it's unclear if he's even going to be healthy enough to even be at a potential trial this fall, Hallie.
Chloe Malas, thank you very much. Coming up here on the show, the stunning resignation just into us. The NYPD commissioner caught in the middle of a big investigation. Why he's stepping aside. Plus, mission almost complete with some civilians, regular folks. Well, kind of, getting ready to come back down to Earth after making history in space. NBC News covers hundreds of stories every day, and because it can be tough to read or watch or listen to them all, our bureau teams have done it for you. This is what they tell us is going down in their regions in a segment we call The Local. Out of our Midwest Bureau, Minnesota State Police are investigating a bus crash that left several people hurt, including a dozen students, so really quite a few people. Police say this car collided with the bus, so it rolled over. Look at the damage here. Fortunately, everyone on the bus is expected to be okay, but the driver of the car was airlifted to the hospital in serious condition. Out of our Northeast Bureau, the mayor of New York City announcing his third police commissioner in less than 3 years after the current one resigned today during an investigation into his enforcement of nightclubs. Sources tell NBC investigators are looking into whether these clubs got special treatment from the NYPD under Edward Cabin's leadership because his brother owns a club security business. The now former commissioner's attorneys say he's not the target of any investigation and that he's cooperating. Out of our Northeast Bureau, a city in Maine is warning people to stop feeding geese because their wings are developing deformities. They're called angel wings, this condition, because they're eating too many carbs. Look at this. Do you see how their feathers look kind of twisted? That's the deal. It's apparently a condition that is permanent, so the geese have a tough time flying. It affects their migration, etc. So, you know, lay off the feeding of the geese up there in Portland. Let's go to space now. Four civilian astronauts are back inside their SpaceX capsule tonight after making history. It's incredible. It's the first ever spacewalk, asterisk, we'll get to that, by astronauts not associated with the government agency. Look at this. Billionaire entrepreneur Jared Isaacman, he paid for the mission, making his way outside the space capsule. I want you to listen to this.
Back at home, we all have a lot of work to do, but from here, Earth sure looks like a perfect world.
That huge roar, that big applause you hear, that's from SpaceX engineers back down here on Earth. They're celebrating this milestone in the world of commercial space travel. It's, again, first time you had these civilians, private citizens going. This is an area that Elon Musk and his company hope to dominate. And if you're like, okay, regular people, not quite average, right? You got that billionaire on board serving as mission commander, fellow spacewalker and SpaceX engineer Sarah Grillis. Rounding out the crew is another engineer and a retired Air Force pilot. NBC's Tom Costello is joining us now. Listen, an amazing moment, right, is what it is. Anytime humans go up into outer space and, like, do anything, it's incredible. What did SpaceX actually learn from the spacewalk? Like, what are some of the concrete lessons they're taking away from this, and how does it affect their company moving forward?
Well, first of all, I think it's important to know why this matters, right? Because it's the first time in history that a non-governmental astronaut has done a spacewalk. That's a big deal. Yeah. And yes, Elon Musk's company is
not
dominating.
a regular Joe. It's not like me going up there in space. These are people who understand the dynamics,
right,
who have done training, who are really steeped in this stuff.
Well, let's make it clear. Yeah, he's a billionaire, Jared Isaacman. I've interviewed him several times. This is the second time he's been in space. He's a very accomplished pilot. He's a very smart guy, and at this point, he's a veteran astronaut. Make no mistake about it. He's got up 2 SpaceX engineers with him and another retired lieutenant colonel in the Air Force who's a very good pilot as well. The point of this mission, really, is to check out the space suits, because this is really about seeing whether these spacesuits can be used in the future for future moon missions, Mars missions. You know, the current NASA spacesuits they wear on spacewalks, they're 40 years old.
That's
40,
old.
yeah.
I'm 40 and I'm old, Tom. That's unbelievable.
I would never guess that.
You would have
never. I would have said 25
Love you.
max. But here's the deal. I don't think you can call this a spacewalk.
Let's get into it, babe, because you know what? He kept his feet on the ship.
Yeah, I would call it a space stretch. And what I mean by that is literally stretching out the arms and the legs of the space suit because they want to see if this is a good, safe suit to use in the future. Is it going, quite literally, was he going to pop a seam up there when he moves in his arms and his legs, right? How good is the connection for his O2, for his oxygen? All of that is critical. He did keep a hand on a connecting, whatever you want to call it, a handle, and his feet also were kind of connected, looped in down below inside the ship. I think that's fine. I mean, my God, if it were me, I'd probably keep my hand, maybe two hands on the handle.
If it were me, I'd keep my feet on Earth. But, you know, your
Exactly.
mileage may vary. Do they have a verdict on the suits, or do they need more time to look at it, research, test it?
But here's the other point, and this is, I think you want to ask me how much.
I think you want to produce this yourself, so go ahead.
No, I'm just looking at the list of
Go for it.
potential
You don't need
issues
me.
here that we're going to discuss. But one of them is quite clearly, what else are they learning? What have they really done that's cutting edge? And one of those other things is this. This spaceship doesn't have an airlock. So quite literally, they had to open up the door to the entire vacuum of space, and all the air flowed out, which means these other astronauts, all four of them in total, had to suit up so that they wouldn't, you know, they wouldn't die of not having any oxygen. So there's a lot that goes on here.
It's fascinating, and it is a really big area of growth potentially for Elon Musk and for SpaceX. Tom Costello, nobody else I'd rather have this conversation with. We'll do it tomorrow in our office. It's going to be great. Thank you again, Tom Costello. Appreciate that. A lot more to get to on the show, including in tonight's original, why Pittsburgh is becoming a hotspot for the fastest growing neurological disease in the world. It's still a medical mystery. To tonight's original now, with in-depth reporting on a topic we've been watching. And tonight, it's parts of the country with unusually high rates of Parkinson's disease, a disease that affects more and more people in this country as population gets older. Scientists are now digging into whether environmental factors, so think pollution in the air, think certain chemicals used in manufacturing and agriculture. They're trying to figure out what causes the disease. That's still a big mystery. Areas like Pittsburgh, now once a huge manufacturing hub, and parts of California with a lot of agriculture are now being dubbed the Parkinson's Belt by researchers studying those links. Here's Yasmin Vasukian.
Across the country, rock-steady boxing classes are packed.
I come almost every single day, and sometimes I come twice a day.
But it's a fitness class nobody hopes to have to join for people living with Parkinson's disease.
When the word got out about what we were doing, we had hundreds and hundreds of fighters.
Parkinson's causes tremors and muscle stiffness. Many patients end up in wheelchairs. And it's the fastest growing neurological disease in the world. 90,000 Americans will receive a Parkinson's diagnosis this year as the population ages. Nearly 1 million are already living with it.
I love debate.
Marilyn Raimondi is one of them.
I was told it's a very slow-moving disease, but it's not going to go away.
Raimondi grew up in Pittsburgh at a time when factories made half the nation's steel, but belched pollutants into the air. Children close to the factories played in a cloud of smog and coal dust.
You'd see the snow, you'd see a layer of dust. And we had no idea what it was. We were just having fun.
Those children are now senior citizens, and many have Parkinson's.
We never realizing that this might be dangerous to us.
This area is a hotspot. According to a study published in Nature, the number of people with Parkinson's is among the highest in the country. In some places, more than quadruple the estimated national average. It's part of what some scientists are calling the Parkinson's Belt, a series of regions in the U.S. with unusually high rates of the disease. Exactly why people get Parkinson's is still a big mystery. One study found that redheads could be more likely to get the disease, while others show smokers less so. And researchers don't know why, but they do think environmental factors play a major role in who gets Parkinson's. Exactly which and how much, still unclear.
If Parkinson's disease were just due to chance, you wouldn't expect to see parts of the country or parts of the world have higher rates than other parts.
Dr. Ray Dorsey is a professor of neurology at the University of Rochester. He believes chemicals used in manufacturing and agriculture trigger the disease, even if the factories and farms are long gone.
Pittsburgh's obviously had high levels of industrial air pollution. It has contaminated with this chemical that's been used for degreasing and dry cleaning called trichloroethylene.
Or TCE, a chemical still used today, though the EPA has proposed a rule to ban it.
both scientifically and clinically.
Here in Pittsburgh, Dr. Tim Greenemeyer has undertaken groundbreaking research into the environmental factors that are thought to contribute to Parkinson's.
So what everybody's working on, including my lab, is trying to find out what's causing the underlying disease.
Dr. Greenemeyer has intimate knowledge of Parkinson's symptoms. He was diagnosed with it in 2021. Early in his career, he was researching a naturally occurring chemical used in pesticides called rotenone.
I was probably a little careless and exposed myself to rotenone in particularly bad ways. And my guess is that my laboratory work with making a model of Parkinson's disease led to my getting Parkinson's disease.
There is still much research to do, but his work helped lead to the discovery of another Parkinson's belt. In California's Central Valley, dubbed by some scientists and environmentalists as Parkinson's Alley. Here, widely used pesticides are strongly linked to Parkinson's.
There's clear-cut epidemiology showing the exact use of pesticides in terms of how many pounds per acre, which specific areas got treated with what pesticides, and what the incidence of Parkinson's disease is that correlates with that.
Scientists think genetics account for about a quarter to a third of the reason people get Parkinson's.
That means 70% is unexplained and presumably environmental.
The hope that learning about the disease could help prevent and treat it. But there is no cure, and doctors have been prescribing the same two-drug cocktail to mask the symptoms for decades. But it doesn't treat or stop the progress. And eventually, they stop working as well.
You lift 1 foot as you go down.
For now, exercise is key for slowing the progression of this debilitating diagnosis, doctors say.
I do it every day, and I don't veer from my regular schedule. You can make time for it if you want to, and I feel it's really helpful.
Come on, Adele. And back at Rocksteady, it's the community that helps as well.
Here, you're not alone. Everybody's in the same boat. Everybody has Parkinson's, and this has become a family for me.
A family desperately in need of a cure. Yasmin Vasugian, NBC News.
For this hour, I will see you back on Sunday on the Nightly News, of course, and then right back here Monday on NBC News Now. We've got more coverage picking up right now. We are coming on the air with a new and dangerous wildfire spreading in Northern California, with crews there telling people get out and get out now. That's as police announce new charges against somebody accused of starting a different fire. We're going to take you live to outside L.A. with the latest. We're also live down in Mississippi, where the remnants of a Category 2 storm is set to hit next. Shelters filling up. The forecast shows more rain coming. We've got the forecast on Francine. Plus, former President Trump late tonight ruling out another debate against Vice President Kamala Harris. Looks like for the two of them, it may be one and done, as both of them barnstorm battlegrounds. We're live in Arizona and North Carolina with the candidates and conspiracy theories shaping this race. And check out this scary picture we're just getting into us out of Nashville. This is a plane with tires blown out after a near collision on the runway. We'll tell you why this happened and what investigators are looking at now. Plus, one small step for civilians, one giant leap for civilian kind. A history-making spacewalk or space stretch that could change the future of travel to the stars. That's later in the show. Hey there, I'm Hallie, and we're coming on the air tonight with news of a new fire burning in California, just north of Sacramento, called the Quincy Fire. And officials say it is spreading dangerously fast. At this point, no buildings are under threat, but in just the last hour, the county sheriff told people in some areas around it, get out now. The new fire comes as California prosecutors tonight are officially charging somebody with 9 counts of arson, accusing this suspect of starting one of those massive fires scorching the area near L.A. on purpose. That's the line fire. It's just about 18% contained. And there's 2 other big fires when you combine that have burned about 110,000 acres of land. If you're like, well, how much is that? It's like 110,000 football fields on fire. Firefighters are hoping that they're going to get a bit of a silver lining. Forecasters are predicting that the weather is going to get cooler, that it's going to rain a little bit more. That may help them get a handle on all of these. Morgan Chesky is joining us now from Southern California. Okay, Morgan, you're in Wrightwood, I believe, the area that's being destroyed by the bridge fire. Talk us through that and that new fire we're seeing north of Sacramento. We know that there are some 70 wildfires in all that are large, that are burning in the west altogether. It is a lot for folks to deal with.
Hallie, understatement. 70 fires, the bridge fire that we're standing amid, the largest in the state, having burned more than 50,000 acres, about half of that burned total over the last several days. That fire near Sacramento, incredibly concerning, Hallie, because it is hotter there than it is here. And both places have one thing in common: incredibly dry fuel. And unfortunately, that's what contributed to the fast-moving flames that tore through this area about 36 hours ago, Hallie. The remnants of this home behind me, all but gone. Here, still smoldering, in fact, when these people evacuated about night before last. And as we come over this way, Hallie, you'll see people were able to make it out in time, but they could not bring everything they wanted with them. And this is unfortunately just a glimpse of the damage in and around Wrightwood today. Evacuation still very much in place. We do know that on the line fire, the fire everyone was talking about last week, authorities did confirm that arrest, 34-year-old facing multiple arson charges. Hallie, we don't know what his potential motive was, but we do know investigators were able to track him down using license plate readers, and that he is currently in custody. And unfortunately, to know that that was intentional only adds insult to injury here.
No kidding. Morgan, is there any sense that things may get worse this wildfire season before they get better?
Well, when we look at the long-term forecast here, there's certainly a threat of that. We do know that while temperatures have dropped a little bit, fire crews say they are making slow but steady progress on the line fire. We're 0% contained here on the bridge fire, but we have been seeing aerial water drops all day long. I want you to hear a little bit of where things stand as it relates to the ongoing firefight. Take a listen.
The reports that I'm getting officially are that we're really holding our own at this point on the line fire, and I think we're going to see, as long as we don't have any dramatic wind changes or weather changes as a whole, that you'll be able to see our firefighters start increasing that containment percentage.
18% containment on that line fire. Fingers crossed that number goes up. Anything, of course, certainly better than the 0% containment here on the bridge fire. Hallie?
Yeah, for sure. Morgan Chesky live for us there in California. Morgan, thank you. Take it down to the Gulf Coast, because in just the last maybe hour, I want to say 55 minutes, we've learned that Francine has gotten weaker. That tropical storm now downgraded to a post-tropical cyclone, but it doesn't mean it's any less wet, if you will. It's got a ton of rain that it's going to bring to the south, and even a tornado threat, too. This is after southern Louisiana took a direct hit when Francine made landfall as a Category 2 hurricane just less than 24 hours ago. You watched that right here on this show yesterday. And you're looking at the scene all across the region. People along the Gulf Coast now trying to make their way back into their homes. Some streets, I want to show you here, totally, like, look at this neighborhood. People can't get around. There's water everywhere in these roads. You had rescuers spending the night trying to pull people out of their houses, out of their cars, as hurricane-force winds knocked over trees and knocked out power.
Yeah, I can actually see that person right now climbing over the seat, coming out of their vehicle right now. That person, yeah, actually coming out of the window. There it is. That Good Samaritan helping. Yes, that's a life-saving measure right here. That guy holding on to the pole. This is a life-saving Good Samaritan right here.
What you just saw there was the moment live on our affiliates coverage, so our NBC station down in New Orleans, WDSU. Incredible moments. I want to keep these up here. A nurse went into this sort of flooded underpass to save this pickup truck driver. Now, the nurse says he was actually watching the station's coverage. He saw what happened. He decided to step in when he realized that something obviously was incredibly wrong. Just an absolute Good Samaritan situation there. Terrifying as you're looking at that. He ended up talking to our Jesse Kirsch today, this nurse did. Very humble, but said he's used to high-stress situations. Watch this.
Try to find something to break the window to pull him out, and there was nothing there, so I ran back to my house real quick, grabbed a hammer, went back, and got him out. We respond as swiftly and fast as we can to situations that need our assistance.
The governor of Louisiana saying today nobody was killed by the storm. I spoke with him in just our last hour right here on the show about the state's need for more resources from the federal government, he said. Watch this.
And the most important thing we can do is get the White House to give us that declaration.
Okay.
That'll get the money flowing down here so that we can improve those infrastructures. Again, we're going to be dealing with the city of New Orleans and the New Orleans metropolitan area tomorrow to find out what kind of failures they had that we can make sure that are not repeated if we have another storm this year.
You heard the governor telling me there about those power outages. You see the numbers here. Louisiana's getting smoked. Quarter of a million. There are 263,000 outages in Louisiana. Mississippi, Alabama, Tennessee, all affected as well. Flood alerts, too, as Francine moves further inland as that post-tropical cyclone. Bill Cairns has the forecast. But let me start with Stephen Romo in Gulfport, Mississippi. You have people going into shelters in the state where you are last night, according to officials. Give us a sense of the landscape now and what comes next for these folks.
Yeah, Hallie, 160 people staying in these 5 shelters that are spread out across the state. Last night, we're told that now there will only be 2 shelters that are actually open for tonight. They will close at 10 a.m. tomorrow. Many of those people were told staying there because of those power outages you mentioned. There are many people that are dealing with those 45,000 customers without power from here all the way to Alabama. And, of course, in the Gulf Coast during this month, that is not something you want to be staying in without access to air conditioning. People with families want, of course, to go to those shelters to stay there. Here in Gulfport, we're told that curfew they implemented from 6 p.m. to 6 a.m., local authorities really crediting that with helping reduce the need for the rescues and all the problems we saw in Louisiana. Of course, they were hit with much more flooding that way. Many people here breathing a sigh of relief that storm surge, those predictions of storm surge, did not come to pass, and thanks a large part to low tide, which came just 2 hours before Francine actually made landfall. Hallie.
Stephen Romo there for us in Gulfport, Mississippi. Stephen, thank you much. Bill, let me go to you. Okay, so this thing is no longer a hurricane. It's not even a tropical storm, but it's still going to be very rainy, and there's the possibility of tornado threats, right? Where's the worst going to potentially hit next?
We'll wait and see if we get any tornadoes that form. So in the last hour, we have had a new tornado watch issued, and that's for this little pink area here in central Alabama. What's left of Francine is actually over the top of Memphis. So it made landfall exactly 24 hours ago right now. So it took from then to move all the way to the north here, now over the top of Memphis. You still see the spiraling bands around. It still has a lot of heavy rain. And I know in Memphis, they've already picked up between 2 to 3 inches of rain, and you could get another couple inches. Let's focus on the new tornado watch, and it's with these thunderstorms. These are kind of bands that are connected to what's left of Francine, and these could have isolated tornadoes. They do include the big cities of Birmingham, Alabama, and Montgomery. We currently do not have any active tornado warnings, but if we zoom in on this one, it's getting a little close to the Birmingham area. Anyone on the west side of town, some gusty, strong winds with this, but it doesn't look like any flare-up of any tornadoes, at least yet. Isolated flash flooding is still a possibility. That's why we got 10 million people still in flash flood watches from Memphis all the way to Panama City, and we will get another round of storms later tonight, especially in the panhandle of Florida. Additional rain, maybe another 2 to 3 inches with those storms I just showed you around the Memphis area, maybe another ½ inch to an inch. So conditions are pretty much as bad now as they're going to get. And as far as what's next, Tropical Depression 9, well in the Atlantic, not going to worry about that. Our friends in Puerto Rico and the U.S. Virgin Islands, you're going to have some squally weather going through, only a 30% chance that develops. In this area off the southeast coast of, South Carolina, North Carolina, and Georgia, this is not going to be a good late summer weekend. It's going to be on and off rain. We're going to have large waves. We're going to have rip currents. That's going to be with the possibility of something trying to develop here. It's about a 30% chance, Hallie. Again, this is not going to turn into a big type storm, but just enough to, ruin your plans if you wanted to get away one last time before the end of summer.
All right, Bill Cairns, thank you for that. You should be a travel agent in your next life. Thank you, sir. Appreciate you. Let's take it to politics now, because right now former President Trump is on stage at a battleground stop in Arizona. There he is. He's been speaking for just about an hour so far with both candidates, both he and Vice President Harris, back on the trail for the first time since that debate earlier this week. Their debate that may be their last, according to Mr. Trump, who just put it out. He actually said it in his rally. He said it on Truth Social. There's not going to be a third debate, he says. And if you're like, well, third, what do you mean? Remember, President Biden there in June, Vice President Harris there just a couple of days ago. He says he's not doing number 3. VP Harris says she wants to. She says she'd be down for it, as her team says it's had its biggest 24-hour fundraising push since she got into the race back at the end of July, with $47 million raised in just a day. It comes as there are some other dynamics at play here, too. Remember this moment in the debate when the former president made this baseless claim that migrants in Ohio are eating people's pets? Well, obviously, That is based on what we've described here on the show as a racist conspiracy theory, essentially. And it's taken a huge toll on the city of Springfield, Ohio, where police had to evacuate several buildings, including its city hall, because of a bomb threat. And yet, here's Donald Trump continuing to fuel the fire just last hour at that rally.
Illegal Haitian migrants taking over a beautiful place. It was so beautiful. Springfield, Ohio. I was there. I campaigned there a while ago. Springfield, it was so beautiful. Now it's just, what a place.
So you see him there. No mention, at least in that soundbite, of pets, including cats or dogs. Over in North Carolina, Vice President Harris wrapping up a rally as she ramps up efforts to try to flip that state. And now the latest polling shows very close margins. VP Harris hopes that all the young people moving in could help boost her chances. Our latest battleground count shows she's already made 15 battleground trips since getting into the race 6 weeks ago, to former President Trump's 20. More on the all of it in just a second with Vaughn Hilliard in Tucson. We'll also have a report from you, Michelle Sindor, in Springfield. But let us start with Mike Memoli, who is traveling with the vice president in North Carolina. Give us a sense of the vibe check here, because in the last couple of hours, late tonight, we've seen the campaign come out and basically say, look, we've raised a ton of money. I believe that one source said we've raised so much money that we don't need Vice President Harris necessarily to be spending all our time at fundraisers. They want to see her put boots on the ground in places like the state where you are.
Yeah, that's right, Hallie. I mean, this whole new aggressive push that the campaign is talking about at this moment is all about having all these set pieces behind them. They had to secure the nomination, pick a running mate, roll out the running mate, do the convention, prepare for a debate. Now they can just focus on the campaign and even not really have to deal much with fundraising, because they've just been raising it almost on autopilot at this point. And the vibes are just so different. We can't repeat this enough. From the last time I was in North Carolina for the first event after a debate, it was in late June. President Biden had that horrible debate. Let's just be blunt about it. We know what happened next. And the Democrats at the rally there were enthusiastic for him, but they were not quite in it in the way some of the voters were today that I had a chance to talk to. Take a listen to a snapshot of that.
The whole idea that, you know, that we're moving forward together and just hope and joy and unity, and I wanted to be a part of it.
It's her turn now. It's women's turn, and she's going to be it. And it's going to be wonderful.
You know, as a woman, she had a really difficult line to ride there. Can't imagine her having done better.
I was talking to a volunteer for the campaign who said, you know, 6 weeks ago I was knocking on doors and say, yeah, I know what's at stake. I'm going to vote for Biden. Now when they knock on doors, they say people are enthusiastic. They say they're bringing their friends. They're signing up for volunteer shifts. So it's a much different situation here in North Carolina.
To all of this, right, talk us through the dynamics at play when it comes to what is next for her, because we know that it's not just about the battleground states. It's not just about the money. There's been a lot of discussion about this being maybe a vibe election at this point. And yet there are also some calls for her to put some policy meat on the bone. I will say there are very similar calls for former President Trump as well. We'll get to that in a second with Vaughn. But what are you hearing from your campaign sources on that?
Well, it's interesting because she did underscore again in her rally here that this is going to be a close election. She considers herself the underdog. When the campaign announced this big, more aggressive push, they said she would be doing more interviews, but they emphasized local interviews, people with their own built-in audiences, not necessarily, I'm sorry to say, maybe people like you and me, Hallie.
Mike Memoli live for us there in North Carolina. Thank you, ma'am. Let's take you out to the other side of the country now with Vaughn Hilliard in Arizona. Okay, the former president, is he still, I can't tell, Vaughn, shift your shoulder a little, do a little shimmy. Is he still on the stage behind you? I can't tell.
He is. He's been going for a while. This is his first rally since the debate alley.
And this is a first look, right, at this post-debate playbook, which looks a lot like the debate playbook and the pre-debate playbook as well. The former president getting out there, sort of talking about what he wants to talk about here, focusing heavily on immigration as well.
Right. Immigration is the line. And I think it's actually notable because at the debate the other night, when he brought up the pet eating line and the narrative, of course, now a conspiracy theory, because there's no credible reports of anybody in Springfield, Ohio, calling about any dog eating or cat eating or pet eating. But the focus point for that was along the messaging of what Donald Trump calls a migrant crisis and its negative impacts on communities around the country. And this afternoon on his social media post, Hallie, he said that U.S. Senate candidates in Ohio and Arizona, Kari Lake here, should focus on immigration and nothing else. Then he just took the stage here in southern Arizona And upon talking about Kari Lake, the Senate candidate here for the Republican Party, he told her in the crowd, he said, you should focus on the border, immigration, and nothing else to win the campaign. And, you know, interestingly, talking to a voter here, a Trump supporter, just before this event started, she's told me, without prompting, that she noticed and she actually wished that he hadn't focused so much on the border, despite, she said, its importance to her as being a resident of Tucson, Arizona, because she felt like she wanted him to talk about other issues. So really the campaign is clearly made attack. Donald Trump has made a conscious decision to focus on the impact of immigration on the country, and we're seeing that play out here now 2 nights after that debate in Philadelphia.
Von Hilliard, what about his running mate, by the way? What have you heard from J.D. Vance ever since the former president obviously referenced him on the debate stage? Because he's out in these battlegrounds too, right?
Absolutely. And actually earlier today, he was on CNBC where he was talked about the focus on immigration. And when he referenced Springfield, Ohio, of course, he's the senator of Ohio, he said that the United States would be a more prosperous nation if it was not in the situation that it is, where, in his words, we're letting so many migrants into the country that are spreading, again, in his words, communicable diseases and taking U.S. jobs. This is sort of that hardline mass deportation messaging that we have heard. Of course, there's a lot of questions and a lot of things that we could pick apart, a part of each of those statements that deserve that time here. But for now, the Republican ticket, they are running across these battleground states on that message, trying to galvanize their base of support and use a certain level of fear about the impact that migrants are having on the country among independent potential swing voters that they need in their corner to win in November.
Von Hilliard, thank you so much for that reporting, Von. I got to tell you, nobody goes from Gulf whisper to normal speaking voice quite like you there at Donald Trump's rally.
I appreciate that.
A lot of background noise there for you, pal. Thank you very much. So as we talk about Springfield, Ohio, let's bring in Michelle Sandor, who has made her way to Springfield for us tonight.
Well, the tension here in Springfield, Ohio is palpable. People are definitely worried that these baseless claims about Haitian immigrants abusing pets are really going to impact life here. Haitian immigrants are very worried. Some of them are telling me that they're scared to walk the streets because they're worried that they might be targeted and that people might actually be violent with them. So it's very heartbreaking to hear their stories because they fled insecurity in Haiti, and now they say that they're feeling insecurity here in Springfield. Meanwhile, there are some residents who believe these unfounded allegations and say that they're credible. They also say that they don't want this community, one person told me yesterday, they don't want this community to turn into a Haitian community. They say they want to keep it an American community. Of course, there are critics of that who say, well, the story of America is that communities do change. You have Germans and Polish people and Irish people, all sorts of people from other countries come here and make America their home. But the other thing I should note is that there's a lot of tension here, and that also possibly, we're not sure if it's connected, but there was a bomb threat, a number of bomb threats, and that caused the evacuation of City Hall and a number of other buildings, including an elementary school. Authorities are saying that they're working with the FBI to investigate. They're not sure who made those allegations and made that bomb threat. They also aren't sure whether it's connected to these baseless claims. That being said, Karine Jean-Pierre, the White House press secretary, she talked about this issue. Take a listen to what she said.
It is undignified and an insult to all of us as Americans, not just one community, but to all of us as Americans. And it is spreading filth that makes the lives of the communities that are being smeared here, it puts their lives in danger.
And just today, former President Donald Trump is now doubling down on those comments. Again, comments about Haitians abusing animals and saying that there are some people that are coming here from prisons. What we do know is that these Haitian immigrants are coming legally here by the thousands in the last few years, but also they're coming here, they say, to have a better life. But it's definitely a political story that is continuing. Back to you.
Yamiche, thank you. Let's take you to New York now, where the mayor of the city is announcing a new NYPD commissioner, his third in just under 3 years, after the current one stepped down today because of an investigation into his nightclub connections, specifically his twin brother's club security business. The now former commissioner's attorneys say he's not the target of any investigation and will continue to cooperate. But this is just one of several investigations into the administration of New York Mayor Eric Adams. Just last week, the FBI raided the homes of two of the mayor's, into his administration, I should say. Just last week, the FBI raided the homes of two of the mayor's top staffers as part of an investigation into possible corruption. To be clear, the link to the mayor himself, not clear. Let's bring in Tom Winter for more.
Well, Hallie, good evening. Yes, the news expected here today that there would be a resignation of New York City's Police Commissioner Edward Caban, the commissioner of the largest police department in the United States, the largest police department in the world, commanding tens of thousands of officers and civilian employees. It had just become too much, according to Caban, the distractions, when it was just a little over a week ago that his cell phone was taken by federal investigators assigned to the U.S. Attorney's Office for the Southern District of New York. Not only was Caban's cell phone taken, but top members of his staff. And it had gotten to the point where every time the police spoke, they were asked about this potential investigation that goes all the way to the top of the mayor's office. They were asked about who else it could have involved, who else was in legal peril. The rumors flying around 1PP, as it's called, One Police Plaza, the headquarters of the NYPD. And ultimately, Caban couldn't even attend yesterday's 9/11 memorial just because it had become so much of a news story here in New York City. So the decision was made this morning by Caban and his attorneys to resign. He has not been charged with anything. His attorneys say that he is not a target of the investigation based on discussions they say they've had with federal prosecutors. They say he expects to cooperate. What might he cooperate on? Well, it's our reporting, according to 3 people familiar with this investigation, Hallie, that investigators are looking into whether or not Caban's brother James, his twin brother James, was involved in receiving money from nightclubs and bars in New York City in exchange for preferential treatment from the police department. And so that appears at this point to be the chief inquiry by these prosecutors. Ultimately, we'll have to see if there are any charges. And as you well know, sometimes investigations don't end up in any charges at all. But the rumor mill, which is prolific at the police department, had to come to an end, at least on this today, Hallie. And that's what this resignation represents.
Tom Winter, thank you very much. Some schools in Kentucky are now shutting their doors as the state's governor is basically begging anybody with any tips about a man who randomly apparently shot 5 people on a highway, 5 cars, to please speak with law enforcement ASAP. Governor Andy Beshear, who you see here meeting with police about this manhunt, says they're pulling out all the stops, but now they're 6 days in and nada.
It's so important that the search is done professionally and carefully because we haven't lost anyone yet from this shooter, and we want to make sure we don't lose anyone going forward.
So here's a big reason why this is tough. Look at this map. So the shooting happened on an interstate in London, Kentucky. It's on the highway between Lexington, Kentucky, and Knoxville, Tennessee. It's like forest, basically. It's just all woods. And while police say they don't have a reason to believe the suspect's not in there, it's super dense. It's kind of like a jungle, if you will. The whole thing has upended life in this part of Kentucky. Nearly a dozen school districts around there are now online only, in part because of pressure from parents. And, you know, Friday Night Lights dimmed for now with a whole bunch of high school football games getting axed. Adrian Broaddus is following this one for us from Chicago. So this person, this suspect, went out, used a gun, shot up multiple cars, apparently at random, according to officials, then took off. Several people had to be hospitalized. Fortunately, nobody died, which is good news about the victims, as the governor points out. But 6 days in, people are still so on edge.
Yeah, Hallie, they are. Even 75 miles outside of Laurel County, where that shooting happened in Lexington, Kentucky, people are nervous. I'll start with the good news. 4 out of 5 of the people who were shot on Saturday have been released from the hospital. Another person is still in the hospital tonight, but all 5 are expected to physically survive from their injuries. A number of school districts nearby have closed and shifted to online learning. For those schools that are physically open, KSP, Kentucky State Police, will be escorting the school buses. So what does that look like? A patrol car will follow behind from the bus stop to the school. A little bit of backlash, some parents choosing to keep their children home.
You know, one thing that the governor, I mean, it's sort of stunning to hear these details here. The governor was talking about some of this in his press conference today. He said it was really concerning to him that the shooter allegedly bought the gun and then used it on the same day. I know you had a chance to speak with the manager at the place where the suspect allegedly purchased this gun. What did he tell you?
Yeah, I did. And I want to point out that he has a background in law enforcement. He didn't physically see the alleged shooter, but I did ask him about the amount of ammo which he purchased. 1,000 rounds. Was that an alarming amount? Here's what he said. Is it normal for someone to buy 1,000 rounds of ammo?
So that's not unusual at all. I mean, you can buy ammo online and have it shipped to your house. And I know guys that do that all the time. They buy cases of it. That case is typically 1,000 rounds. People that do that are often avid shooters.
So what would raise a red flag? He said if someone came in requesting 20,000 rounds. And tonight, there's no evidence Joseph Couch has left that area. Hallie.
Adrian brought us more to watch on that front for sure in the days and in the hours to come. Thank you. Coming up, still no real answers on the mysterious bird flu case that's spooking a whole bunch of people. We'll get into it. Plus, an incredibly heroic rescue. Police officers saving kids from a huge house fire with just seconds to spare. All of it captured on video. We're going to show you in a sec. I want to get to some breaking news now. An Alaska Airlines plane having basically stop its takeoff on a runway at Nashville International Airport to avoid a potential crash with a Southwest airline plane. This is according to Alaska. So this is what happened. There are like 176 people on board. Nobody got hurt, but I want to show you some of the video here. You can see the plane, and there's another shot of its tires apparently blown out. Officials obviously on the tarmac responding. There's the tire there. It happened when the plane was braking. I want to get to Phil LeBeau here. And Phil, it seems like we're talking more and more about these sort of near misses, if you will, these sort of close calls. This one obviously happening on the ground. What is going on?
We're seeing more incursions on the runway, and that's because there's greater congestion and the number of flights, Hallie, that we are seeing in this country, close to a record high right now. And as a result, there's greater pressure on the air traffic controllers, on the airports, on the pilots, on everybody involved in order to make sure that everything is aligned for a takeoff and a landing. And we hear about these incidents. Yes, they are scary. The fortunate thing is that this aborted takeoff avoided a major disaster, but we will hear about this increasingly, this type of an incident, because there's so much greater congestion in terms of the number of flights that airports are handling.
What are airlines and the people who make the plane saying about this issue more broadly?
They're worried about it. In fact, there was a special meeting that was held earlier this year by the NTSB. It included executives from airlines. It included safety advocates, airport executives, the air traffic control leadership, all of them getting together to talk about what type of technology might be available to make it easier for air traffic controllers or for airports or for pilots to have a better sense of what's happening on the tarmac before a takeoff or a landing. And some of that technology is going to eventually make it into aircraft and into airports, but it's going to take some time.
Yeah. Phil LeBeau, glad to have you on that one for us tonight, this developing story there on the tarmac. Thank you. Let's get you over to the 5 things our team thinks you should know about tonight. Number 1, the father of the teenager accused of killing 4 people at that Georgia high school last week is asking a judge for protection while he's in jail. Why is he in jail? Well, he's being held without bail after being arrested for allegedly letting his son access the gun used in that shooting at Appalachia High School. The dad's lawyer says he needs to be separated from other inmates because of, in their words, an incalculable number of threats. Number 2, the CDC says it hasn't ID'd a clear source of infection in that Missouri patient who tested positive for bird flu, meaning we don't know how that person got it. They had no known contact, according to the CDC, with cows, poultry, or dairy. Officials think it might be kind of a one-off, like maybe they got the virus after going to a zoo or a farm with animals who were infected that were. The person was not seriously sick. They've since recovered, but obviously the investigation goes on. Number 3, the Idaho Supreme Court is transferring the case of an accused serial killer into Ada County, where Boise is. So this answers a big question we had earlier in the week. Where would Brian Kohberger, that suspect, get his trial? He's accused of murdering those 4 University of Idaho students just about 2 years ago. Remember, his lawyers said they wouldn't be able to get a fair trial in the county where that crime happened. A new judge has been assigned to the case, and the trial is set to start in June of next year. Number 4, a new video, look at this, shows Texas police officers saving 2 children from a house fire. The officers had to take out an air conditioning unit. Look at this. They opened a window and unbelievably pulled out these 2 little boys. Just incredible heroism there. And look at this. Just minutes later, you can see fire shooting out of that same window. The kids were taken to the hospital, and amazingly and incredibly, they are expected to be just fine. Number 5, we might be saying goodbye to Brat Summer, but we can now say hello to Brat Autumn. Charlie XCX has a brand new remix version of the Brat album out, so that happened. Getting a little bit of everything here on the show tonight. Let's take it to New York now, where a lawyer for disgraced Hollywood producer Harvey Weinstein says he expects new charges against his client to be serious felonies. The 72-year-old faces a November trial on what prosecutors say are new accusations of sexual misconduct. Big caveat, we haven't actually seen those charges. They're all sealed right now. And if you're like, wait a second, this is super confusing. What do you mean new trial? Didn't he have a trial? Isn't he in prison? What about this LA thing? There's a lot. Nobody blames you. There have been court cases on 2 coasts for years now. We're talking about this one today because a judge back in April threw out Weinstein's New York rape conviction. Remember, more than 80 women have said Weinstein sexually assaulted or harassed them. He denies it all. Let's bring in Chloe Malas for more. She's joining us now. We have these new charges that have been filed against Weinstein. Tell us about what we know and, importantly, what we don't know.
Hey there, Hallie. I mean, basically, we don't really know anything. I mean, the bottom line is that there are 3 incidents, one from 2005 to 2006 in the winter, another from 2006, and then one from 2016. So 3 different incidents. We don't know if this is one woman, multiple women. We don't even know who the accuser or accuser's attorney is. This indictment is expected to be unsealed next week. And remember, Hallie, NBC News, we were the first to report that a New York grand jury had been convened to hear from new potential accusers. And clearly, the New York District Attorney's Office is determined to retry Weinstein, like they said when his 2020 conviction was overturned. You know, they said that they had heard from other victims and that they were going to get him back in a courtroom.
Some people might be looking at this going, well, wait a second. Chloe, why is he still behind bars? He is still a convicted sex offender, even with that earlier New York conviction overturned, right, because of what's happening out in L.A.
Yeah, so, again, if he had not been sentenced to 16 years for those separate accusations in the state of California, he could potentially be a free man out on, waiting for this potential new trial, which is expected to take place on November 12th. And because he has this 16-year prison sentence, which he hasn't even begun to serve yet. He's currently in Bellevue Hospital right now, recovering from a heart procedure. But again, he has been held in Rikers. I do want to play some sound from earlier today from one of Harvey Weinstein's attorneys outside of the courthouse.
Even if you don't think highly of Mr. Weinstein, as citizens of this city, this state, this country, you should be upset. You should be like, hey, this is not right. This is not how we're supposed to do things. You don't target a human being and then see, let's go talk to 100 people and maybe we can find someone who says something bad about him, bad enough that we could get an indictment.
So it's looking like Harvey Weinstein is going to head to trial on November 12th, Hallie, and it could be that he faces the original 2020 charges as well as these new accusations, which, again, we're going to learn more when this indictment is unsealed next week.
What about his health? Because didn't he just go in for a procedure at the hospital? His lawyer says he's had some of these health problems. Like, what's going on there? He's 72 years old, right?
Earlier this week, he had major heart surgery, and he's currently recovering at Bellevue. New York prosecutors, they wanted to send him back to Rikers, but his team was actually successful today in getting him to stay at Bellevue. So it's unclear if he's even going to be healthy enough to even be at a potential trial this fall, Hallie.
Chloe Malas, thank you very much. Coming up, the dangerous flooding sweeping some deadly reptiles out of the zoo and into the streets in Nigeria. We're going to show you some of the very, very interesting video. Plus, the historic spacewalk or space stretch set to become a mission complete. What it means for the future of civilian space travel. Next. NBC News covers hundreds of international stories every day, and because it can be tough to read or watch or listen to them all, our teams around the world have done it for you. Here's a look at what they're watching in a segment we call The Global. Out of Vietnam, officials say something like 200 people have been killed. More than 120 other people are missing after that huge typhoon nearly a week ago. Water levels finally started going back down today. People are cleaning up their homes where mud is just coating everything. Landslides and floods are also overtaking rice fields there. Out of Nigeria, a new video shows rescue teams deploying boats to save people from rooftops after a ton of flooding nearby. You see some of the emergency vehicles there and the people waiting for help. At one point, the floods hit a zoo and it killed a lot of the animals. It started when a dam overflowed from heavy rain, affecting more than 1 million people. In Singapore, thousands of people getting together to attend Mass, led by Pope Francis today. More than 50,000 people waited outside a stadium for the Pope's last service in Southeast Asia. It was his final stop in a 12-day tour. Let's take it to space now, where 4 civilian astronauts are back inside their SpaceX capsule tonight after making history, completing the first ever spacewalk by astronauts not associated with a government agency. Spacewalk asterisk. We'll get to that in a second. I want to show you here billionaire entrepreneur Jared Isaacman. He paid for the mission, making his way outside the capsule. Watch this.
Back at home, we all have a lot of work to do, but from here, Earth sure looks like a perfect world.
That applause you hear, that is from SpaceX engineers back on Earth, celebrating a milestone in the world of commercial space travel. So yeah, civilians, right, doing this space situation, but they're not like regular Joes, right? They're not like me and you, unless you happen to also be a billionaire, veteran, pilot, like astronaut person. Maybe you are. You got Jared, who just talked about Isaacman, billionaire on the board, mission commander. You've also got fellow spacewalker and SpaceX engineer Sarah Grillis. Rounding out the crew is another engineer and a retired Air Force pilot as well. NBC's Tom Costello is joining us now. Listen, an amazing moment, right, is what it is. Anytime humans go up into outer space and, like, do anything, it's incredible. What did SpaceX actually learn from the spacewalk? Like, what are some of the concrete lessons they're taking away from this, and how does it affect their company moving forward?
Well, first of all, I think it's important to know why this matters, right? Because it's the first time in history that a non-governmental astronaut has done a spacewalk. That's a big deal. Yeah. And yes, Elon Musk's company is dominating.
Not a regular Joe. It's not like me going up there in space. These are people who understand the dynamics,
right,
who have done training, who like are really steeped in this stuff.
Well, let's make it clear. Yeah, he's a billionaire, Jared Isaacman. Yeah. I've interviewed him several times. This is the second time he's been in space. He's a very accomplished pilot. He's a very smart guy. And at this point, he's a veteran astronaut. Make no mistake about it. He's got up 2 SpaceX engineers with him and another retired lieutenant colonel in the Air Force who's a very good pilot as well. The point of this mission, really, is to check out the space suits, because this is really about seeing whether these spacesuits can be used in the future for future moon missions, Mars missions. You know, the current NASA spacesuits they wear on spacewalks, they're 40 years old.
That's
40,
old.
yeah.
I'm 40 and I'm old, Tom. That's unbelievable.
I would never guess that.
You would have
never. I would have said 25
Love you.
max. But here's the deal. I don't think you can call this a spacewalk.
Let's get into it, babe, because you know what? He kept his feet on the ship.
Yeah, I would call it a space stretch. And what I mean by that is literally stretching out the arms and the legs of the spacesuit, because they want to see if this is a good, safe suit to use in the future. Is it going, quite literally, was he going to pop a seam up there when he moves in his arms and his legs, right? How good is the connection for his O2, for his oxygen? All of that is critical. He did keep a hand on a connecting, whatever you want to call it, a handle, and his feet also were kind of connected, looped in down below inside the ship. I think that's fine. I mean, my God, if it were me, I'd probably keep my hand, maybe 2 hands on the handle.
If it were me, I'd keep my feet on Earth. But, you know, your mileage may vary. Do they have a verdict on the suits, or do they need more time to look at it, research, test it?
But here's the other point, and this is, I think you want to ask me how much.
I think you want to produce this yourself, so go ahead.
No, I'm just looking at the list of potential issues here that we're going to discuss. But one of them is quite clearly, what else are they learning? What have they really done that's cutting edge? And one of those other things is this. This spaceship doesn't have an airlock. So quite literally, they had to open up the door to the entire vacuum of space, and all the air flowed out, which means these other astronauts, all 4 of them in total, had to suit up so that they wouldn't, you know, they wouldn't die of not having any oxygen. So there's a lot that goes on here.
It's fascinating, and it is a really big area of growth potentially for Elon Musk and for SpaceX. Tom Costello, nobody else I'd rather have this conversation with. We'll do it tomorrow in our office. It's going to be great. Thank you again, Tom Costello. Appreciate that. A lot more to get to on the show, including in tonight's original, why Pittsburgh is becoming a hotspot for the fastest growing neurological disease in the world. It's still a medical mystery. To tonight's original now, with in-depth reporting on a topic we've been watching. And tonight, it's parts of the country with unusually high rates of Parkinson's disease, a disease that affects more and more people in this country as population gets older. Scientists are now digging into whether environmental factors, so think pollution in the air, think certain chemicals used in manufacturing and agriculture. They're trying to figure out what causes the disease. That's still a big mystery. Areas like Pittsburgh, now once a huge manufacturing hub, and parts of California with a lot of agriculture are now being dubbed the Parkinson's Belt by researchers studying those links. Here's Yasmin Vasukian.
Across the country, rock-steady boxing classes are packed.
I come almost every single day, and sometimes I come twice a day.
But it's a fitness class nobody hopes to have to join for people living with Parkinson's disease.
When the word got out about what we were doing, we had hundreds and hundreds of fighters.
Parkinson's causes tremors and muscle stiffness. Many patients end up in wheelchairs. And it's the fastest growing neurological disease in the world. 90,000 Americans will receive a Parkinson's diagnosis this year as the population ages. Nearly 1 million are already living with it.
I love to bake.
Marilyn Raimondi is one of them.
I was told it's a very slow-moving disease, but it's not going to go away.
Raimondi grew up in Pittsburgh at a time when factories made half the nation's steel, but belched pollutants into the air. Children close to the factories played in a cloud of smog and coal dust.
You'd see the snow, you'd see a layer of dust. And we had no idea what it was. We were just having fun.
Those children are now senior citizens, and many have Parkinson's.
We never realizing that this might be dangerous to us.
This area is a hotspot. According to a study published in Nature, the number of people with Parkinson's is among the highest in the country. In some places, more than quadruple the estimated national average. It's part of what some scientists are calling the Parkinson's Belt, a series of regions in the U.S. with unusually high rates of the disease. Exactly why people get Parkinson's is still a big mystery. One study found that redheads could be more likely to get the disease, while others show smokers less so. And researchers don't know why, but they do think environmental factors play a major role in who gets Parkinson's. Exactly which and how much, still unclear.
If Parkinson's disease were just due to chance, you wouldn't expect to see parts of the country or parts of the world have higher rates than other parts.
Dr. Ray Dorsey is a professor of neurology at the University of Rochester. He believes chemicals used in manufacturing and agriculture trigger the disease, even if the factories and farms are long gone.
Pittsburgh's obviously had high levels of industrial air pollution. It has contaminated with this chemical that's been used for degreasing and dry cleaning called trichloroethylene.
Or TCE, a chemical still used today, though the EPA has proposed a rule to ban it.
Both scientifically and clinically.
Here in Pittsburgh, Dr. Tim Greenemeyer has undertaken groundbreaking research into the environmental factors that are thought to contribute to Parkinson's.
So what everybody is working on, including my lab, is trying to find out what's causing the underlying disease.
Dr. Greenemeyer has intimate knowledge of Parkinson's symptoms. He was diagnosed with it in 2021. Early in his career, he was researching a naturally occurring chemical used in pesticides called rotenone.
I was probably a little careless and exposed myself to rotenone in particularly bad ways. And my guess is that my laboratory work with making a model of Parkinson's disease led to my getting Parkinson's disease.
There is still much research to do, but his work helped lead to the discovery of another Parkinson's belt. In California's Central Valley, dubbed by some scientists and environmentalists as Parkinson's Alley. Here, widely used pesticides are strongly linked to Parkinson's.
There's clear-cut epidemiology showing the exact use of pesticides in terms of how many pounds per acre, which specific areas got treated with what pesticides, and what the incidence of Parkinson's disease is that correlates with that.
Scientists think genetics account for about 1/4 to 1/3 of the reason people get Parkinson's.
That means 70% is unexplained and presumably environmental.
The hope that learning about the disease could help prevent and treat it. But there is no cure, and doctors have been prescribing the same 2-drug cocktail to mask the symptoms for decades. But it doesn't treat or stop the progress. And eventually, they stop working as well.
You lift 1 foot as you go down.
For now, exercise is key for slowing the progression of this debilitating diagnosis, doctors say.
I do it every day, and I don't veer from my regular schedule. You can make time for it if you want to, and I feel it's really helpful.
Come on, Adele.
And back at Rocksteady, it's the community that helps as well.
Here, you're not alone. Everybody's in the same boat. Everybody has Parkinson's, and this has become a family for me.
A family desperately in need of a cure. Yasmin Vasugian, NBC News.
I will see you back on Sunday on the Nightly News, of course, and then right back here Monday on NBC News Now. We've got more coverage picking up right now.
Thanks for watching. Stay updated about breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or follow us on social media.